It's crossover time. So what I am doing is the tweeter and super tweeter on a separate board, because it's the woofer that I'm going to need to muck around with. Now remember, I've used this woofer with those tweeters before, so I kind of pretty much know where I'm going to end up, but they're in a different box and there's a few other variables, so yeah, the woofer part I will probably tweak slightly. So I've made up one of my crossovers for the tweeter and super tweeter, and I'm going to stick the camera on time lapse and do the other one in a minute. So yeah, just to tell you what's what, I've wound all my inductors. So I've wound one for the super tweeter, and then I've wound the two inductors we need for the HF1300. It's worth noting in the BC1, the two inductors that one's in shunt and one's in series with the first capacitor. It's worth noting that they're wound round the same ferrite core in the BC1, so they're not kind of two separate inductors. And if you look at the literature, I've actually got the service manual for the BC1A, and it does have the circuit diagram for the crossover. And if you look at the two inductors that are used on the HF1300, one is a 0.3 millihenry and the other side of it is 1.1 millihenry. If you put them in series and measure them, you'll get about 1.4 millihenry, because that's how inductors work. But the way they're set up in the BC1, you actually get more like 2 millihenry across them. That's why I've stacked them, because I get a similar reading. Whilst they're individually 0.3 and 1.1, stacked they're getting nearer to 2. I'm not as close to that because there's no iron core in here, and they're probably not working as much as they would like in an auto transformer arrangement, which is kind of what it is. But yeah, I find that's necessary, so that's how I've done it. So on the super tweeter, we have our positive in through a 1 microfarad cap through this inductor, which is 0.1 I think, down to ground. With I've put 2 resistors across here to make our 33. I've actually ended up with 34. And then we come out from that junction through this 1 microfarad to our super tweeter, and then on the HF1300 circuit, positive in, so there's a link underneath here, through this 1 into the bottom inductor. We come out of that bottom inductor and follow on to here, but in the middle of that we're picking up this inductor and grounding it, and then out to our HF1300. Yeah, so that's basically what I'm making up. So on the back we're all soldered up. I've used some copper to pick up some of the components and bits and pieces. Bit of hot glue just to hold things in place. I've put a hole through there because I'll probably bolt this through the back of the cabinet, so it's really sturdy in there. But yeah, this part of the crossover is kind of a given. It's the woofer that I will need to muck around with, but like I say, I pretty much know where we're going to head with that. So yeah, looks nice and neat. Like these TSE capacitors, they're not that expensive. They're polypropylene, and I get good results for them, and I've got a good supplier for these. Solon is the other winner for these crossovers, but I've got tons of these now, so that's what I'm using. Right, so there we go. That is the other one done. So we now have two crossovers for our HF 1300 and for our Coles super tweeter. So these two will be our Coles. These two will be our input. And these two will be our HF 1300. And the woofer will sit on its own board because the inductors for that are heavy, because I'm using all air core inductors for this entire crossover. So yeah, not going absolutely bonkers nuts with the components, but very good components. So there we go. Right, time to crack on with the crossover design through measuring and get the woofer sorted out. Right, these have sanded up so well. There is basically not a mark on them. Really pleased. I'm pretty sure the veneer is walnut, just by the knots and things that are in it. So yeah, it's come up really well. Mega pleased. They're obviously just an original pair that have just sat in someone's house and never been mucked around with or molested, really. So yeah, give them a wipe down and then get some oil on them, but it's, yeah, bloody fantastic. Beautiful. Well, it's raining again, like it always does in the middle of summer in Devon. But anyway, right, I've now got one coat of Danish oil on these. I didn't film putting the Danish oil on. If you want to, it's not exactly difficult. Get a cloth and put your Danish oil on and work it in. Look at my recent Celestion Hadley video if you want to, not Hadley, sorry, County video, and you'll see how I oil them up. It's pretty straightforward. Normally I give these probably 2, maybe 3 coats of Danish oil, and they come up really well. But yeah, I'm loving this grain. It's really nice, and it's developing a really nice sheen down it. So yeah, these are going to look really nice when they're done. Even the bottoms weren't bad. I could have gone at that a bit harder, but there's just no point really. Yeah, really next to no marks in there at all. So very pleased. So these are going to be a good
There we
looking
go.
pair.
I've
Just dropped one of the baffles in. So yeah, that's looking super trim. Very pleased with that. So the next step is to put some screws in that baffle, and oh, lovely. If you guys, any of you guys have got a pair of BC1s, if you knock on them, obviously that's not screwed in, you'll recognise that sound. Just that's the sound you get from panels that are damped rather than heavily braced. The heavy bracing will give a kind of high-pitched knock. You get that deadness. So yeah, I think these are going to be pretty good. Anyway, let's crack on. Okay, so I've spent some of yesterday and all this morning on my measurements, and yeah, I've got them really good. Third order on the Woofer, third order on the tweeter, and also the super tweeter. I've had to make some adjustments. This inductor value I used was wrong. I should have gone with what I measured before on many a BC1, and not what I kind of saw in the manual. It just rolls the HF off far too hard. So I've got that working brilliantly. Very pleased. Just clipping components in and out. A bit of a dog's breakfast, but that's kind of what you end up doing to get this right. So what I'll do, I'll draw this all out, and then we'll be back on the bench putting this together. Yeah, the measurements are really good. I've only put up a little bit of my room treatment, so they're not completely accurate. Once I've got the crossovers all together and everything, if the weather's nice outside, then I'll do my final measurements outside. But yeah, pretty good. Yeah, these are turning out really well. I've listened to them as well in here. I need to do a bit of port tuning now, just to see what I can get out of the bottom of them, and we're almost there, I think. Right, so what I've had to modify here on the super tweeter circuit was purely to clip out one of the resistors that I had in there. So this now has an 82 ohm resistor across the inductor. Just lifts the level of the super tweeter up a little bit more. I also found that on the 44XRs I did, it just helps. So yeah, so simple third order still on our super tweeter. So now on the HF1300 I've introduced another 1 microfarad here, so we're coming in to a 2 microfarad in effect, and then we carry on to this inductor that I've now put in here, which is a 0.37? 0.37? Yeah, 0.37 millihenry, and then we carry on to a 1 microfarad and a 2.2, making a 3.2. And in between these two we have this, between these two we have this inductor 0.3 millihenry down to ground. So that has worked out really well. So I had to take out these. I don't really know what I was thinking when I was putting those in, but there you go. I've ended up with, if you build it all properly and then you have to make adjustments, it never ends up as good as it was originally. Really, I should have just clipped this together and done all the measurements rather than just go for it. But there we go. Yeah, so this can go in, and then we can put the woofer crossover together. So that's one of the third order boards done for the woofer circuit. So we've got our positive and negative in here, through this inductor, out to this inductor, and in between the two we have our 2.2 and a 4.7 ohm resistor down to ground, and then we come out of this inductor here. So yeah, just a separate board for the woofer. That's really heavy, so I've got 2 screw holes there. Nice. Right, so this is the crossover that we've ended up with. So on our woofer, here's our woofer. We've ended up with a 1.8 millihenry inductor, another 1.8, and then ground in the center of those is a 2.2 microfarad capacitor, and we also have a 4.7 ohm resistor. So that creates our third order low pass filter for our woofer. And then on our HF1300 we come through a pair of 1 microfarad capacitors in parallel. We then come through a 0.38 millihenry inductor. We carry on to a 1 and a 2.2, microfarad cap, so making a 3.2, and then here we have our inductor down to ground, which is 0.3 millihenry, and we go into the positive of our HF1300. So third order high pass, but we are rolling the top off a little bit. And then with our super tweeter, we come in from positive into a 1 microfarad capacitor through to another 1, and then in the middle we have a 0.1 millihenry inductor, and bridging that we have an 82 ohm resistor, and we go into the negative of our super tweeter. So that's what we've ended up with, and that has worked really, really well. Very pleased with it. So in the final video I'll put up all the finished measurements and some sound clips, but yeah, they're looking really good. Okay, catch you on the next one. So these have now had 2 coats of Danish oil, and as you can see they are starting to gloss up really nicely, and I love the grain. It's just really nice. So I'm pretty sure it's walnut, just by the tightness of some of this. And where are we? Yeah, this sort of thing. 9 times out of 10 these are teak, but I'm sure this is walnut. But yeah, they are starting to look really nice. I think a third coat, when that's properly settled down, will see these finished up nicely. But yeah, I mean, the way the cabinets are done, the grain just following around, you know, that's something you don't see often in kind of modern speakers, and you can make out here where you got a real wood moulding on the front, which is how the cabinet builder I'm using to do my HA36s, and ultimately the others as well, does them. And then you can, you know, if you get any corner cracks this or knocks, this can be sanded without going through the veneer. So it's probably the better way of doing it. But yeah, really pleased with these. They're coming out nicely. Binding posts now on the back. Drivers and crossovers are all in. So I'm going to set these up in the office and leave them running for the day, just to get a few hours on those components before I start listening to them, probably on Friday night. And then if everything's good, the edge will get some 10mm velcro round, which will cover up the screws. Ultimately the screws are how you access the speaker for maintenance, but that'll all be covered up. And yeah, I just like that idea, so very pleased with these.